Can you hear me on Zoom?
Tell them to just read. They have to thumbs up release.
Can you hear me on Zoom? Oh, yes. Okay, yes. All right. Can you hear me on Zoom?
Mute the TV. Tell them to just read. They have to thumbs up release. Just read. They want to thumbs release. Echo from the.
No, I don't think so.
Can you still hear me now?
Yes.
From the.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything I should do to prevent that? Because I'm turning on my.
What's this Bluetooth for? That's for the project clicker. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see.
So why is it echo?
Echo.
Yeah, that we don't need to watch.
Yeah. So let's try. Can you guys?
Can Kumaraswamy, can you say something?
Yes, we can hear you.
Echo.
Don't need to watch.
I can hear
Yeah, let's
Kumaraswamy.
try. Can you guys?
And Kumaraswamy, can you say something? If we just turn off the sound from the
Yes,
TV.
we can hear you.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing.
Oh, okay.
Don't need to watch.
I can hear Kumaraswamy.
Okay. Hold on.
Kumaraswamy?
We can hear you
Turn
fine.
off the sound from the TV.
Yes.
Very
We
good.
can-
Okay, good. Just on the TV.
Yes, we can hear you.
Kumaraswamy?
Yes.
We can hear you fine. Off the sound.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Good. Just on the TV. Like a ghost.
I don't want to change it. Right now, what is it on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Kumaraswamy?
Second device TV.
But there's a lot of delay though, right?
So no, it's just how is it now? Right now, what is it on? That works too. Yeah. But he won't be able to hear them now.
Can you say something? Kumaraswamy?
Their speaker wasn't working.
Dan?
We can hear you.
Okay, very good.
Nice.
Excellent. Okay, I can hear you as well.
We can hear you.
This isn't working.
Clicker.
Okay. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karuvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Just take a moment to bring our consciousness to a state of equilibrium. Very nice. Those of you who are online on Zoom, the best way to communicate with me is via the chat. A notification will come up and I will open the chat and I will read what you write. If you try to speak, things get very entertaining. So just send a notification or your question, whatever you want to share through chat, and I promise I will open it up, read it, and go from there. Forgiveness, 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 forgiveness. So many of you some of you have been able to see the video I sent out on forgiveness. And I got a lot of feedback, much of which was Mahavishnu, what you talking about? You're making no sense whatsoever, which is good because now we can actually dig into forgiveness, because forgiveness is really, if you've had difficulties in life, extreme difficulties, various traumas, forgiveness is something that is necessary in order to heal, in order to not also have that trauma spill on to your family, spill into your professional life, spill into so many other relationships. I want to start with Arjuna's story and dilemma. I am unable to go to the next slide, but that's okay.
You could use the up and down thing
Up and down
over on the left.
on the laptop.
Yeah. There.
Just sit right here, just in case. Arjuna's story, and this is very interesting in the issue of forgiveness. And we're going to have I want to have a lot of discussion and Q&A afterwards. But let's get through the presentation to allow for that. Arjuna's on a battlefield, and the backstory is very, very important because Arjuna and his family go through a lot of trauma. I'm not going to elucidate all of the trauma because most of us here know it, right? Stealing of the kingdom, murder, assassination attempts, abuse of Arjuna's wife in a number of different scenarios. The amount of trauma that is heaped upon Arjuna and the Pandavas is more than any single family would ever experience. It is off the charts, the amount of abuse that they experience. Now they're on the battlefield. This is an opportunity for Arjuna to wreak revenge on the people who have caused him and his family so much pain. So he sees them all in front of him, but he's also overcome with compassion for the fact that many of whom these individuals caused him problem are family members, their cousins, their teachers, his grandfather, Bhishma. And on both sides, all these people are going to die. So he's feeling a certain way, conflicted. Should I have compassion? Should I forgive? So he goes through all kinds of mental gymnastics as to what he should do. He decides, I'm not going to go to war. And he sits down on the chariot and he says, Krishna, I'm not going to fight. So this is his dilemma. He has perfect legitimacy in going to war and eradicating the face of the world, these people. But he decides not to. Now, Krishna's response is completely, it's almost, as we would say in America, it's in left field. He doesn't really directly address Arjuna's questions because Arjuna's questions are all based on the legality of the battle. Is it the right thing to do in terms of spirituality and compassion and dharma? But is it the right thing to do in terms of social needs? If all of the leaders of society are killed, what's going to happen to society? Krishna doesn't address any of that. And he addresses the issue from a completely different perspective. And he addresses the issue from the point of what matters and what doesn't. And in Krishna's viewpoint, what matters is what is eternal and what is temporary. So he doesn't address issues of revenge. He doesn't address issues of right or wrong, issues of legality, dharma or not. He addresses what's eternal and what's not. That is the starting place of Krishna's teachings, not good or bad, not anything else. And this is very, very important. Now, when we talk about forgiveness, and I'm going to add a bit of my own story. I have spent, and continue to spend time working through forgiveness. And all of us have in some form, shape, in their lives, have grappled with issues of how to forgive a situation, a person, so. And my own personal journey with forgiveness has come to the realization that forgiveness is, and we've been hearing about forgiveness in so many ways, we talk about, oh, you have to forgive, move on, and all of these instructions about forgiveness are all over the place, but very few, and if you've done your own search, you will know this, very few tell you how to forgive. A lot of gimmicks are given, like one was write down what's happened to you and then burn it, or write a letter to the individual, don't mail the letter, or mail the letter. All kinds of various gimmicks are given about how to develop or how to have forgiveness. Go visit the person, talk to the person. But these gimmicks work or may not, but turn out to be, in many cases, temporary. And the reason why is because when another person does something that trespasses against us, we're back in the same space of having to forgive again. So we go through this cycle of, we may get some relief in one situation, but we go to work the next day, the boss says something, and we're in tension again, needing to go through this issue of forgiveness with another individual. So it never stops. The cycle of being offended, being harmed, being injured, and then having to go through and seek forgiveness for all of these different things. Because, and this is where we come to, I love the example of Christ. And by the way, this happens to be Easter Sunday, so it actually works quite well. Christ is pinned to the cross, and he says to God, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. And this is something that when the Upanishads, when the Gita, when the Vedas talk about forgiveness, it echoes what Christ was talking about. And if we look how Christ speaks about forgiveness, he does not, from what I understood, he does not himself, it's not about himself forgiving his perpetrators. He's asking God to forgive them. For Christ, he is not in a place where he's feeling, now, well, obviously he's feeling pain, right? He's pinned to the cross. But he is not asking, Father, give me the ability to forgive them. He's saying, God, please, you forgive them. In other words, Christ was not at all in his consciousness affected by the issue at hand. This is why I use the term forgiveness doesn't exist. And I'm going to clarify that because people are looking at Mahavishnu, we're going to tear you apart now. Krishna's odd response. I'm going to come back to why forgiveness doesn't exist. Krishna's response to Arjuna, he doesn't deal with the issues of forgiveness. He goes to what's eternal. And his first teachings in Bhagavad Gita, the soul is eternal, the body is temporary. So in the video, one of the exercises I give is explore what was taken. Someone has trespassed against you, someone has injured you. What was taken from? Was it your time? Was it your dignity? Was it your innocence? Was it your feelings of self-esteem? What specifically was taken from you? In that exploration, you will find 9 times out of 10, what was taken was temporary. In other words, it's based on your material body or your material identity. Now, very important, it doesn't give license. It doesn't mean that what was done does not affect you. We're not saying that. Obviously, there's pain involved, there's injury involved. That person who was perpetrated against you, was trespassed against you, must be corrected. We'll come back to that. What we're identifying, what Krishna identifies, is that whatever is being done, it's connected to the body and therefore temporary. It has to be dealt with, but it is temporary. And in the identification that it is temporary leads us to the next question. What is eternal? In other words, what truly matters? And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, the soul. So Krishna's answer to Arjuna, he doesn't say go to war for the reasons of dharma, for the reasons of society, for the reasons of this or that. He says, put all that aside. Are you self-realized? Do you know what matters in terms of eternality? in terms of what lasts beyond the material body. Answer that question, then decide whether or not to go to war. Now, going back to how this relates to forgiveness. In the exploration of forgiveness, let's go back to Christ. So Christ is pinned to the cross, and all the people around are watching this. Who's seen the Passion of the Christ? Yeah, I don't recommend it. It's absolutely, half the time I had my eyes closed because it's just brutal. But a lot of the teachings around Christianity is that Christ was so forgiving. Christ was so forgiving. But in Christ's own words, he doesn't ask for God to give him the power to forgive. He asks for God to forgive them. And the story I gave in the video about Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni set a demon upon this saint, Ambarish Maharaj. And then Ambarish Maharaj was not offended by it. He just accepted what was coming. And we'll talk about acceptance as well, because this is part of this. What should be accepted, what should not be accepted. And then Vishnu sent the Sudarshan Chakra, chased Ambarish around the universe. Durvasa Muni went to Lord Shiva, went to Lord Brahma, finally went to Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu says, you offended Ambarish. You go to him. If you get his forgiveness, then you will be relieved of Sudarshan Chakra. Durvasa Muni ran to Ambarish, fell at his feet. Ambarish Maharaj, and this is very important, Ambarish Maharaj says, there's nothing to forgive. There's nothing on my part to forgive. There's one more story I'd like to share. And this is the story of Dhruva Maharaj. Many of you may know that as well. Dhruva Maharaj was the son of a king, King Uttanapad. And King Uttanapad had two wives, well, a number of wives, but he had two main wives. And Dhruva Maharaj was a primary queen and the secondary queen. Let's use those terms. So Dhruva Maharaj was the son of Suniti, the primary queen of Uttanapad. But the second queen, Suruchi, she had a son as well. And Suruchi was a very low-class character, very envious and so on and so forth. So she was able to poison the king's mind against the primary queen, Suniti. So her son, Uttam, she conspired to have him be the favorite of the king. So one day, Suruchi's son, Uttam, was playing on the king's lap. And Dhruva Maharaj, the son of the primary queen, Suniti, wanted to play on the king's lap as well. Suruchi, she saw this, and she told Dhruva Maharaj, get off the king's lap. You're not fit to be on the king's lap. Unless you're born from my stomach, you have no right to be on the king's lap. And the king, being completely controlled by Suruchi and influenced by her low character, did not defend his son. Dhruva Maharaj was furious, devastated, really. So, the boy went running back to his mom, Suniti, and told everything to Suniti. And he was furious. He was angry. He said, how can they do this to me? How can they say this to me? And Suniti said two very, very, very poignant instructions she gave to Guru Maharaj. One was, she said, do not wish harm upon Suruchi and Dhruva. Because if you wish harm upon them, all you're going to do is attract it to yourself. We all heard about the law of attraction and how what you focus on, you magnify. Suniti also recognized that principle. So she says, do not wish harm upon Dhruva and Suruchi, number one. Number two, whatever you want, don't worry about them, go to Vishnu and ask for what you want. And in that way, you will focus on the positive, focus on your spiritual development, and through that, you will get relief from what you're experiencing. She did not tell Dhruva to forgive them. Very, very important. The instruction by Suniti was not to forgive them. One, don't wish them harm. Two, pursue your spiritual development, and you will get relief. Let's come back to forgiveness and how forgiveness doesn't exist. When the conditioned individual all of us, when we look at the saints, Dhruva Maharaj, Jesus Christ, and we see them going through so much difficulty, yet remaining in a forgiving, using their quotes, a forgiving mood. They're not reacting out of vengeance, they're not reacting out of anger and so on. We say, oh, they are so forgiving. So when we look at that attitude from our place of conditioning, we call it forgiveness. But on their level of spiritual maturity, it's not forgiveness. It's their state of being. They have nothing to forgive. They are not under the influence of the same conditioning. So for them on the spiritual level, forgiveness is not about forgiveness because they do not experience harm in the first place. Now, we have to define what is harm. Yes. Krishna, if we go back to the Bhagavad Gita, and this is why Krishna's response is odd. Because Krishna's definition of response has nothing to do with the body. That's the first definition, the first instruction Krishna gives to Arjuna. He says, what happens to the body doesn't matter. Now, there's caveats, of course, right? But for the self-realized, what happens to the body is secondary. Let's use the term secondary. Is secondary as long as you have in consideration what is the nature or the quality of the soul, of what matters, of what is eternal. If we keep sight of that, then of course we can actually take care of the body and what the body needs. But the overarching consideration is the soul. What is eternal? What truly matters? Then carry on to be concerned about the body. Now, in the video, I talked about how looking at, exploring, and investigating what was taken, but also search on what was given. And in all the teachings and the teachings of Suniti, when she was instructing her son, she was saying, this is an opportunity for you to come closer to the Supreme. She immediately focused on the opportunities that came with the very same situation. So, however, it doesn't mean that we, and this is the second part, forgiveness mindset. I skipped past that, but I'll touch on this briefly. The forgiveness mindset is, I have been harmed and the harm should be righted, should be corrected. There should be amends that needs to take place. And we're going to come back to this. We're going to come back to the righting of a harm, because there's so many things that happen to society that are unjust and need to be righted. Absolutely. We're going to come back to that. But the forgiveness mindset, seeking forgiveness, keeps us in the material body, keeps us in the conditioning of the material body. And this cycle of, even though I may forgive, I've forgotten your name. Kumal. Forgive me if the pronunciation must be horrendous. I have forgiven Kumal today, but tomorrow Vidushi has said something. Now I have to go through the same process with her. The forgiveness exercise that I went through with Tomo, it was effective. Okay, now all is right, I'm fantastic, but it does not transfer to the experience I've had with Vidushi. And then the day after, with my wife, with my boss, it does not transfer. I have to go through the same or a different exercise because the relationships are different. She's a friend, this is my wife. Oh my God, she does something, the forgiveness, therapy is required now. All right, the therapy is done. Well, forgiveness, some relief. And then my boss says something. It's a different relationship, different time and space. It was public. And I'm back to the same situation where I've got resentment, upset, anxiety. So when we in the forgiveness mindset that is focused on the body, the experience, the lessons do not transfer to each individual situation that requires me to forgive. I'm always susceptible to be harmed or perceived harm from any number of ways. That's the problem with forgiveness as we practice it in this day and age. We're always in a cycle of having to forgive someone for something. This is why Krishna sidesteps this whole issue of forgiveness because it's connected to our material body, our material identity. He says, go to self-realization. If you are self-realized, in other words, if your identity is not based on the body, it doesn't mean, and I'll continue to say this, it doesn't mean that what happens to the body doesn't matter. Of course it does. We're going to come back to that. There's a time and place to deal with that. But if we're situated in spiritual understanding, in recognizing and understanding our spiritual nature, what is eternal, what matters, then from that space, forgiveness, it's not an issue because we're in a place, our consciousness, where what a person is doing to us, we do not see it in terms of harm to ourselves. And this is the second part of Jesus Christ's statement. They know not what they do. On the spiritual, on the level of self-realization, there's no question of evil, good and evil. E balo, e mono, e sub brahma. It's a Bengali saying from a Bengali saint that this is good, this is bad, it's all a mistake. On the level of self-realization, good and bad doesn't exist. It's knowledge and ignorance. From a self-realized perspective, when they see foolishness, they see the way to combat, if you will, foolishness is added knowledge, or in other words, self-realization. To the degree the individual is self-realized, to that degree the person will act accordingly. So a self-realized person will see they know not what they do. It's not a question of forgiveness. When our child is sitting on our lap and they pee all over us, do we ask the child to forgive us? No, because they know not what they do. Our level of conscience is higher. When any number of situations, loved ones do things to us, particularly our children, that's a perfect example of seeing where we do not seek forgiveness from our children. They know not what they do. That's the level, that's the symptoms of a self-realized person. They're on a level where what is happening to doesn't change everything. If Nikhil pees on Chandar or on me, there's a different result. They know not what they do. Me, I'm not related in that type of relation. I freak out, right? The only difference is the level of realization in the relationship. So this is why I say forgiveness exists only from the outside and seeing it in a self-realized person. It looks like forgiveness. So we say, oh, Davey, see how he's dealing with it? You should forgive like that person. And she's like, you idiot. We are not on that level. So for me to say, get over it. Oh, it's been 10 years now. Get over it. Move past it. Let it go. Write a note and burn it. We are seeing something, we're calling it forgiveness, not recognizing it isn't forgiveness, it's self-realization. That individual is operating from a place where what's happening is an issue of knowledge and ignorance. They are not offended in that way. They're not harmed in that way that we perceive them to be harmed. We see, oh, it's so horrific. Christ is being nailed to a cross. For us, if we were in that situation, we could never forgive. How could you possibly forgive? I recommend, and I highly recommend. This was back maybe 2 decades ago. I just dated myself. There were a series of books called Chicken Soup for the Soul. I don't know if you remember those books. Yeah. Some of them are kind of cheesy, but many of them were their chicken soup for the soul for all kinds of different things. Get some of the nicer ones, Chicken Soup for the Soul for grieving parents or something. There's a few nice books along those lines. The stories are amazing. But in some of those, not some, in most of those stories, you see an individual experience some traumatic event, and then 30 years later, 20 years later, they look back and say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And they're talking about a traumatic event where someone didn't beat them up and left them for dead. And then 20 years ago, they look back and say that was the best thing that ever happened to me. What's changed? We say time, but consciousness. Yes, of course, time, but they're seeing things from a different space. When Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, all Krishna's doing is shortening that time span, where when something happens, the self-realized person gets there immediately. It doesn't take 20 years to get that perspective. The self-realized person is there. So when something's be nailed to the cross at that moment, Jesus Christ sees it's the best thing that's happened. He doesn't need 20 years to get that perspective, that growth in maturity and consciousness to see it was the best thing. It happens instantaneously. Now, the problem is, and this is wrong way. This is something I have said to particularly Sudarshan. He and I have a appreciation of Alan Watts. And Alan Watts coined a phrase that I have completely fallen in love with, and that is the pedestalization of spiritual enlightenment, where we think self-realization is the state of being that only Martians can achieve in zero gravity situation with standing on their heads with a third arm. Self-realization is something that is really put out of reach for all of us. So Mahavishnu, you're saying self-realization, and that's the only way we can be above forgiveness, and I can never get there. Pishtosh. Self-realization is actually our default situation. The problem is distractions of the world. We have not been taught. This is why the Vedas talk about Gurukula. Prahlad Maharaj gave the instruction at the youngest age possible, we should all be able to connect with our spiritual selves. Because once we get into life, the distractions are such, it becomes hard. It's simply a matter of not doing it before. But children are it's so easy for children to connect with their spiritual nature. They don't know it as such. It's hard to see it as such, but it's so easy for when doing Gurukul class. The kids getting into their meditation, they get right into it and they hold it without any distractions for minutes and minutes and minutes on end, and with no problem whatsoever. That practice needs to start early, needs to continue. And as we get older, more mature, we recognize that that state is the beginning of being self-realized. Now, this is the last slide. Then we're going to go into some, you can all tell me how wrong I am in so many ways. A quick summary. Forgiveness is what we see a self-realized person is exhibiting. To us, we call it forgiveness. And then we go around and tell everybody else you should forgive. You forgive. You won't have this resentment. You won't have this pain if you forgive, like Christ did. So people are going around dealing with this trauma, trying to deal with this trauma, going on TEDx and trying to find out how to forgive. And they're saying burn letters and all these gimmicks. And then they're going from relationship, trauma to trauma, trying to forgive all these people. And it becomes the story of their life. Trauma and forgiveness. The cycle never ends. The breaking the cycle has to come to self-realization, where you are above. Doesn't mean you don't experience hurt. You're above imbibing it as part of your identity. Yes, Christ was hurting, bleeding, feeling it, but it did not change the maturity of his spiritual consciousness. Number two, self-realization is at our fingertips. Another example I like to use is glasses, right? You put your glasses on your head and you're fumbling around looking for your glasses. They're right on our head. The only thing is we don't know it. And if we don't know it, they could be on the moon. But it's not. They're sitting right on our head, and you just have to flip them down and you see a whole new reality. You exist differently. So self-realization is right there. We are moments away. The issue is distractions and lack of habit. We've just never done it. And we've all experienced it. And maybe on a Monday, you do a little meditation and you just feel, in a sense, that everything, speaking for myself, there is nothing you need, nothing that you want, require, you are in that space, you are contented, you're satisfied, you are joyful, not thrillful, not in a thrilling way like you're on a roller coaster ride, but just everything is exactly as it should be. We've all experienced that, I'm sure of it. The question is how to keep that state when you go to work the next day and your boss is a moron and he's causing problems. Then we lose it. We fall back into forgiveness and so on and so forth. So the question and the problem is retaining that state of self-realization. And that's just practice. So self-realization is not a destination, or as Alan Watts says, some pedestalized state. Self-realization is a choice that we can enter into. And it's a choice that has to be made in every situation. And the more you make that choice, the more natural it becomes. So you go through life and the choice is not a choice anymore. It's the way you live. So self-realization is not a place. It's not some achievement that's only rare people can attain. It's a choice. Difficult to make when we haven't practiced it, but it is a choice and it's closer than we think. Now let's talk a little bit about the sadhana of self-realization, because this is where we can go into the how when we talk about forgiveness. Take forgiveness, get rid of it. Now, wait, I'll slow down. Okay. There's a place for forgiveness, obviously, because when we are harmed, when we are hurt, we feel it. It's a reality. We are hurting, you're aching, and we have to deal with it, obviously. So these gimmicks that I call them of forgiveness can help in the short term. They can get us to a state where we can just deal with the harm, depending on how deep the harm is. So even though I've defined them in a derogatory way, they have their place as a band-aid on a situation. As long as we recognize we have to rise to self-realization. So these gimmicks or these practices of forgiveness do have their place, and find the ones that work for you in a particular situation. But we really want to work on self-realization. And I want to hammer this point home, and I always do so. Self-realization is far easier than religious people tell you. It's not the province of some guru has to bless you to get it. It's right. The glasses on your head is self-realization. You have it. It's part of you. It's Vidushi doesn't agree. We'll come back to that. It's right there. I cannot stress this enough. Don't let, in a lot of books you may read on spirituality, the translations of such books make it sound like, the Buddha and the this and the that and Jesus Christ. No, 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 no. Those translations and those connotations are amplifying the difficulty without also amplifying the proximity, right? They just amplify the difficulty. It's up there, it's this, it's that, it's that. And we don't see any of that, or we don't see any Buddhas, or we wouldn't recognize any Buddhas that are walking around us. So we see as something, but it's right, the proximity of self-realization. It's not that it's right here, the capacity is within us. The capacity to walk is inherent in a child. It's there. The only problem is no one encouraged them to get up and do so. They have to practice and practice and practice. And now Nikyu and Kartik, they don't think about walking. They want to do something else, and walking happens. The self-realized doesn't think about forgiving. They're going through loving the world, and forgiveness, we see it as forgiveness. For them, they're just existing. So self-realization is closer than we believe. Now, the sadhana of self-realization, and then we'll go into some discussion. Those of you, I see a notification of something in the chat. Oh, Kumaraswamy, okay, if you've not already left, which I believe you have, I'll connect with him via messaging. The sadhana of self-realization. We go back to the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna had all these questions, all of these, what do I do about this? And that he gave so many reasons. Krishna went to the issue of what is eternal. Oh, you can't see it because my bar.
You could move that bar up. Yes, there is.
Atato Brahma Jignasa. This line is the first line of the Vedanta Sutra. Atato means now, Brahma Jignasa means inquiry into Brahman, or the Supreme, or the Eternal. Now begins inquiry into the Eternal. That's the sadhana of self-realization. Simply the question, what is eternal? What matters? That question, what is eternal, opens up a plethora of, especially if you don't believe in life after death, if you don't believe in what's beyond the here and now, that question of what's eternal, it can really get the mind turning. So when I talk about sadhana of self-realization, it doesn't have to be standing on your head, deep morning rituals or such. It can be getting up in the morning, having a wonderful cup of chai, thank you, and just thinking, what matters? What is eternal? What is eternal? Just start there. Atato, this is the beginning. Just start there. What is eternal? What lasts after I'm dead? If you keep pulling on that thread, you're going to blow a fuse. In other words, questions are going to arise. And keep pulling at all those questions. And that's the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra is literally an entire Vedic literature on pulling on that thread. What's eternal? Why is it eternal? If it's eternal, what matters? Because if it's eternal, that gives it purpose, that gives it meaning. If it's temporary, it falls down the level of priorities. Now, so in terms of a sadhana, I humbly request and stress, spend a few minutes every day with a cup of tea, with a little bit of time with children. If you have young children, it's a little harder because they're on top of your head. But if you can get moments, a daily questioning, a tato brahma jignasa, what matters? What is eternal? What is going to be here? What of me exists after the body is dead? And then extrapolate that to your relationships and the relationship with your children, your friends, your family. What part of this relationship is eternal? What is lasting? What matters? This is what the Bhagavad Gita is founded on. This is what the Vedanta Sutra is founded on. What matters? And then at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, now that you know what matters, now decide whether you want to go to war. Krishna said you have to, he didn't say you have to go to war. That's not there. Krishna did not say in the Bhagavad Gita, at the conclusion, you have to do this, you have to do that. He says, now that I've shown you Brahman, Brahma Tattva, what matters, the truth. Now make a choice, whether you want to go to war or not. On the level of self-realization, that's when we make our best choices. From a level where we, dealing with conditioning and ego and anger and this and that, we make choices in that space. Even when the choice is temporarily correct, it probably will not translate to the next person. And that's where we get this collateral damage, right? Even if we rectify one situation, the long-term repercussions we don't know, repercussions to others may or may not be good, the repercussions to ourselves, all kinds of consequences we do not know. We're dealing with the outcomes that are far beyond our ability to even contemplate when we are stuck in ego, conditioning, anger, greed, all of these things. Our best decisions happen on a level of self-realization. That's where forgiveness is. That's where patience is. That's where kindness, compassion is. It's all on the level of self-realization. Does it mean we cannot practice those things before that time? Of course we should, absolutely. But we're always going to find ourselves. It's going to be a practice rather than who we are. It's going to be, should I be compassionate now or not? We're going to be in a situation, Arjuna. Should I be compassionate now or not? Did I kill Duryodhan because he attacked my family or not? We're always going to be questioning what we do. Whereas in the case of Jesus Christ, there was no question. They don't know what they do. Forgive them. Because I am not Ambarish Maharaj. There's no question of forgiveness. There's no question. The self-realized person exists in that space. Now, last thing, the perpetrator, the person who has caused harm, must be dealt with. Still, in dealing with the perpetrator, we deal best when we are coming from a place of self-realization. Because from that space, we're not acting or reacting out of anger. We're not acting or reacting out of a sense of this person is harming me, I want vengeance. We're coming from a space of where this person has no knowledge, operating from a place of ignorance. Am I able to impart knowledge? Who is able to impart knowledge? Maybe I'm not the best person to impart knowledge, or this individual is not in a space to receive knowledge. This individual has to be removed. I always like to use the example of a tiger. Right? A tiger is ignorant and goes around killing people. Now the tiger has to be removed. No one is saying that the tiger is a good thing, that the tiger is eating people. The tiger must be removed. So perpetrators of evil must be dealt with, must be removed, but they're best dealt with by persons who are self-realized. That's why in the Puranas, in Vedic histories, the kings, what were they called? They were called Maharaja. Maharaja means great kings, but the connotation is they have control of their senses. They're operating from a space of realization. So when they give punishment, when they give corrective and disciplinary actions, it's not based on a sense of revenge, anger, and all these things. It's based on what is best for the individual and everyone involved. Okay, anything to share or discuss so that you all agree with me 100%?
I want to just, I don't know, two things. One, you said everything right. I'm not saying it, arguing on it. So that means, I'm just summarizing it. That means once you're self-realized, I think everything is resolved. Not only forgiveness, your anger, your arrogance, everything comes centers, right? You become that person. For sure. But for me, as an individual, I don't think it's that easy. Because we all struggle, even with one thing. And I totally understand. Once you are that person, there is these things, forgiveness doesn't exist, right? Those things do not exist, like anger, because you are self-realized. But to get there, I mean, it's, yeah, sadhana, I do understand sitting down and feeling this. But
Yes, this is, sorry.
You can, I can ask, or I can add to that same
Please,
thing.
please.
So I think I agree with you. Self-realization is the glasses that's on your head. You can put it on when you're ready or when you can. 100% agree. But one thing I've found in life is that when you are self-realized and you're dealing with life, like you have to take important decisions and be fair and, don't distinguish between good or bad because everyone has a perspective of where they're coming from. But when you're in that position for a long time, and then you come across people who are not self-realized at all, especially when I don't even have to think about outside, like when you deal with kids, they're not self-realized. They're spontaneous, they're having fun. So for a person who is self-realized, you have to turn off that self-realization when you want to be spontaneous.
That's a great question.
And I think that is what pushes me away from putting that glasses back on all the time, because how will I be enjoying life if that's all I'm doing?
Right.
And maybe I'll be envious of people who are not self-realized 24/7 at some.
Yes, Arjuna asked the very same question. in a slightly different way. This is a great question. Arjuna asked, I heard something. Arjuna asked, if you have a question online, please put it in the chat and I will address it from there. Arjuna asked Krishna in the 7th chapter. He says, all right, Krishna, you're talking about this self-realization, but dude, really? I mean, come on, we're in the battlefield here, self-realization is for another time, another space. You've got problems here. But if I engage in self-realization, if I don't achieve it, or if I'm halfway and I don't get there, maybe if I get there, it's fine. But if I don't get there, then what about the reality of the world around me? Have I also left behind my, or have I made mistakes because I'm pursuing self-realization, haven't achieved it, but I've allowed the world around me to languish, maybe relationships or situation? What happens in the real world if I don't achieve a self-realization, or a self-realization takes me away from the real? The answer, Krishna says, first, two things. First of all, one, no. Your journey towards self-realization does not prevent our engagement in the world. Quite the contrary. Krishna says, a person engaged in the pursuit of self-realization is not, Krishna uses the term, meet with destruction or have adverse effects. The person who's pursuing self-realization, achieves self-realization, they sapashyati, yapashyati, sapashyati. That person actually sees things as they are. So self-realization provides clarity. And to the degree there is self-realization, to that degree there is more clarity. So they actually engage in the world better, because they do not engage in the world through the lenses of calm, Krodh, Moha, Mother, Messiah. When we remove calm, Krodh, and all of that, we actually see the child we're dealing with without personal traumas being put, our personal traumas being put on the child. Because in our self-realized state, our personal traumas are not a factor. We see our personal traumas, but we do not project them onto others. When we're in self-realization and Sanem does something, my experience in a previous relationship and my divorce does not bleed into my relationship with her, even though Sanem has done the exact same thing my ex-wife did. But because, hopefully, there's some maturity on my part, that trauma does not infect this relationship. That's what self-realization does. It gives more clarity rather than less. So we actually want the self-realized individual. They are the best leaders. They are the best. I was telling, it was Anand's wife, Venus, just as I was leaving your house one day. And she was saying, we were just talking something about, we were talking Muji at the time. Yeah. And I was saying, basically, if your spirituality doesn't lead to a better relationship, doesn't lead to a better interaction with your husband or wife, what's the use of it? And she gave this smile that actually took me off guard. And she gave me some cane. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that we think spirituality disengages us from the world. And that's the same problem Arjuna had with Krishna throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is asking questions after question. And his question is all about, well, yeah, that's self-realization, but I'm here. I'm a king. I'm a kshatriya. I got a battle to fight, a kingdom to rule. How does your talk about self-realization deal with the here and now? And Krishna kept having to describe to him, self-realization clears your lens. It clears your trauma. Now, I don't want to use the word clears trauma because that has certain connotations in the modern vernacular. What I mean by clears trauma is that you do not act based on a trauma you may have experienced. That's why I love the Jesus Christ. He's being traumatized, but his trauma does not infect how he sees the world in front of him, which means they're ignorant. They don't know any better. They should be given forgiveness until knowledge can be bestowed upon them. He's being traumatized. So it's not that trauma goes away. I'm not talking about the going away of trauma. I'm saying that the self-realized exists in a space where their experiences does not pollute their consciousness in how they deal with the world. So the self-realized, good. So the self-realized sees clearer and it can engage better with the world to the extent they are self-realized. I see question marks still in your eyeballs. We'll come back to that. But yes, let's get others involved.
I wanted to, sorry,
Please.
yeah. No, I wanted to, I remembered, I was listening to, as I listened to a lot of people. So this was a teacher from Satya Sai Baba's, in that tradition. So one of the examples he gave, we think that self-realized people don't get angry or they don't get, they're always calm. And so he was giving this example of Satya Sai Baba once. He was very close to him. When he was alive, so he said he was coming out of, there was some guy, one of his workers, or, he did something wrong. And he got very angry at him. He was shouted at him. And this teacher said, I was very surprised. I said, how can he do that? He's a self, he's at that pedestal. But then he said, immediately he turned around and talking to somebody else with great love. And so he could, like you were saying, switch on and off. Self-realized, as a self-realized person, he was the person who did something wrong. He could deal with him in an angry, obviously he was telling him that he didn't do something right, but in an angry voice. But immediately he could switch up, and so he was very aware where he was coming from. I think self-realization, maybe, I don't know, is more of you being aware what you are doing, or in what context. And let's say your children did something, you're angry with them, doesn't mean you're not self-realized, but factually, if he did something wrong, then you are trying to guide him, whether through anger or whatever. And then you can switch off and you start loving them again, right?
I'm going to say it very good. So once you self-realized, you're self-realized, right? Am I right?
Carry on.
Okay.
You're sucking me into a trap. But sorry.
So how I understand is, once you understood yourself, once you realize yourself, there's always not a destination. You're on the journey. But once you realize yourself, then you're realized, right? It's not like a situation will come with blah blah. Then you deal with the situation with your self-realization, what you have. Every situation. So in Chandra's example, once you self-realize, do something, or your boss does something, then you deal with that situation, whatever situation you are in, with your knowledge and self-realization, because you got that. So no situation will put you back. That means you're not self-realized. That's how I feel.
Okay.
Are you sitting here? No,
I'm not,
Let's
I'm not.
wait everybody.
Yes, wait till everyone's settled because I have two things I want to remark. Dorothy, you had something, or?
I was just gonna say that I think that sometimes there's a big misconception about self-realization out there because of a lot of books that people read about self-realization and how to get to the self-realization pinnacle, and what is it. And I think there's a lot of misconception that people get from these books that, like you said, it's like this out there thing that we're trying to reach in the cosmos that is not attainable for the normal person, and that if you do attain it, there's some very, very strict guidelines that you have to fit within, and that everybody has to fit within those guidelines to be which I don't think is true. I think there's a lot of misconception. I think there's a lot of misinformation in books that have been written, and that self-realization is unique to each individual.
Yes. It's expressed very uniquely. You would not know a self-realized person if you tripped and fell over them on the sidewalk. Now, on the other hand, if you did, that's because you're resonating at the same frequency, so to speak, right? You can recognize when someone
Or through actions.
through action, like if like a jeweler, if Jetson's a jeweler and he's looking at a diamond in a certain way, another jeweler will recognize, he is a jeweler because she's a jeweler. But if Jetson's looking at something like this, and I'm thinking, well, does he know what he's doing or not? Because I'm not a jeweler. I have no idea what he's looking at or feel. I didn't know. Exactly. I don't know if it's blind or not. But another jeweler will recognize another jeweler.
Yeah.
Those of us who are walking around blind, we're blundering about. And yes, self-realization is expressed uniquely because, and this gets off into a different topic, but an important one, we are unique spiritual individuals. Spiritually, we are unique as we are physically. Our spiritual fingerprint is as unique as our physical fingerprint. So our self-realization goes differently. When you talked about self-realization, once you get there and then you're there, you don't fall back. No, self-realization is a choice. And remember, choice is essential because without choice, you cannot have, come on, I've said it before. Oh, hey, Bhagwan, you all should know me better than that. Love. If you don't have choice, you can't have love. And we understand that bhakti is an essential quality of the soul. It's essential. We see it expressed in every single species. The evidence, the echoes of love, of appreciation, of that connection. Bhakti is this one of the signatures of the soul. Love requires choice. So self-realization, if you can achieve self-realization and you were stuck there, is that love? You're stuck there. You can't come down from it. You can't choose something else.
No, but if you are self-realized, you know what is more and what is not, right?
Yes.
It's your soul or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Then I think everything comes with it. Doesn't matter. You got that knowledge. How do you not have that knowledge if love comes naturally?
Yes, that takes me to what Sudarshan was saying. He was saying how the individual showed anger here and love over here. The example I like to use is of hunger and starvation. When we are starving, that's appetite as it's when it's intense, when it's not being, it's a certain energy of hunger. It's and things begin to fall apart. The body begins to eat itself, and all bad things take place. But appetite is a healthy condition. Starvation is not. Appetite is, but it comes from the same energy. So on a self-realized level, we see it as, oh, he's being angry. Oh, well, now he's being loving. So we see it differently. Self-realized person is taking energy, and he sees this individual will respond to lack of knowledge if I exhibit anger. This individual will respond to a lack of knowledge if I exhibit love. The self-realized person is it's the same energy. We see two different energies because we don't recognize a jeweler. So bringing that to your example of turning off and turning on or changing of things, it's not the self-realized is not turning off or turning on. It's not switching between love and anger. The self-realized is just using energy and is applying it. She is applying it where it will best facilitate knowledge, illumination. Did that help?
Yes, I agree with that. Okay.
Mhm.
But I still say, once you're self-realized, no matter what situation you are responding to or reacting, I shouldn't use the word reacting, whatever situation you are responding to,
Mhm.
you're responding with that self-realized knowledge. Whether you are responding with anger or love, because you know anger is required in that particular because of the child or whatever animal is. but you know with the knowledge, and you know that's best for that person or in that situation, not because you are selfish or you are angry or it's helpful to you. You know you are reacting in that way because that's what's required at that.
Yes.
But you are still self-realized.
How do you know you're self-realized or not?
No, you don't sometimes.
Whoa. Yes. How do you know whether or not you're self-realized?
Explain something to her.
Okay.
I think I have an example for you.
Sure.
So,
By all means.
about like a month ago, I'm going to go on a very specific example just to respond, to the self-realization question. I think if I'm understanding him right, I'm going to do an example. So I am a clay person, as some of you know. I go to the ceramic studio where there are several people, a lot of people, a lot of friends. And about a month ago, I also now have the privilege of renting one of the artist studio spaces. And our small artist studio is shared, and a new member came. Her name is Tanjang, and she is one of the best photographers. She's really excellent. She's Korean. She is just amazing. And I was downstairs talking to somebody else, and this somebody else started criticizing Sanjang because she's not firing her own work, even though she now has the clearance to fire her own work. She doesn't know how to fire, therefore she's a good enough cutter. To me, that felt like gossiping because she's looking behind and she's not saying something positive. And I don't have a lot of tolerance for gossiping. I don't like it. So I lashed out. At that moment, I didn't say anything angry. I was very angry because of the gossiping. I told her in a very cold voice. I said, "Who decides that firing your own work makes you a better artist? Who decides? Who makes that decision?" Basically, I was saying, you idiots. Later on, I had a conversation with Maha and realized at that moment, I was not choosing to be a self-realized person. I got angry and I let the anger take over me, and I responded very coldly to her, even though gossiping is wrong, in my opinion. And she was doing something wrong, in my opinion. And I did feel like I have to defend my other friend. But the choice was not love. You see what I mean? If, suggested with my wonderful husband, if instead of saying that, if I chose being self-realized at that moment, maybe I won't be self-realized next day, but that moment I had a choice. I had an opportunity. I missed it. If I was self-realized at that moment, if I had the intention of love at that moment, I could have easily said, "Oh, I really love Sanjang's hair." It's not related to the subject. It's not related to being an artist. It's not an attack because my ignorant response was an attack. See what I mean? So self-realization, when he says self-realization is a choice, and he said, if glasses, I just, I could have done it. I could have chosen to be self-realized at that moment, and then that would have transformed something. Now that woman is looking at me like that when she sees me at Muscle because she's upset with me.
Yeah.
Well, you could have said the same thing in a different way.
Exactly. But you see what I mean? I could have chosen self-realization or love.
And then you're self-realized. Even sometimes that doesn't make you non-self-realized at that point. Because you still have that knowledge. Yes, you slipped word once or twice. You understood it. I mean, you could have used better words.
That's because I have wonderful students.
Yeah, but so Mahati is wonderful. Mahati, according to all of us, I guess, you feel that you are, even you can get a little upset. That won't make you not self-realized at that point. Because whenever you do get a little bit upset, it's okay because you're still using the knowledge. And That's fine. But look at that, what was that? Maharishi, just with a glass of water he drank and he got so upset. What kind of Maharishis you are? And you are going upside down to create a demon and doing all that. What does that say? Self-realization.
Okay. How do you know that you're self? This is a rhetorical question. How do you know if you're self-realized? So, and it's in the phrase itself. It's self-knowledge. The term is atmagyan. Because we have not, from a very young age, practiced self-awareness, we don't know. How many kids at the age of 4 or 5 years old have been taught sit down and think? You know, I mean, you know what I mean? How many have practiced dhyana yoga, which is a process of self-awareness? They have no, so it's not a question of are we or are we not. We have no idea we cannot self-diagnose. And once we learn how to do it, it's very easy. She did it. In that example, she immediately was able to self-diagnose after the fact. All we're trying to do is shorten the gap in time. So we can self-diagnose as long as we know, as long as we have the habit, we know the process of what it means to self-diagnose. So we can choose self-realization. Now, I'll come back to you. It's not, and this is why choice is essential. Choice, it's called Icha Shakti, the energy of choice, the power of choice, of will to choose. It's inherent within us, but we have to choose it, and we just don't have the practice of doing it where it's immediate. Influences take over. We would not be able to recognize whether a self-realized person is being angry or not. A self-realized person who has the habit of self-reflection will think, you know what? Anger used me. I did not use anger. Or in other words, the energy used me and I lashed out, or I did not take the energy and use it to uplift. A self-realized person is self-aware. That's all it is. It's self-awareness, knows what's going on and can choose accordingly. Yeah, she's coming back at me, so this is good. Please, yes.
I'm going to throw a curveball at it.
Please.
So, how do we give us some tips on how do we shorten the time span on doing the self-realization in the moment?
Yeah.
Because that's
This
really
is
the
it.
crux of it.
Yes.
Because all of us
This
know
is the
it's
crux.
important to be self-realized.
Oh, excellent. This is now we're getting somewhere.
It counts with confidence.
Yes, yes.
How to define what is self-realization and what is like self-doubt. If you're self-pairing yourself, so many times you're thinking, okay, did I do the right action or not? But then you get into that habit of self-doubt also. And if you do so much, then you lose track of which path you're going. You're just analyzing yourself and you doing that again and again. Yeah, it's a vicious circle, guys.
Yes, yes. Very good. Excellent question. So now this is now satsang's beginning. Okay. So self practical way of
Self-realization.
self-realization. If you, and we'll come to your question. Let's do it right here, right now. You don't have to answer the question, but I'm going to ask the question. What are you feeling in this instant? Do you feel as if you are in control of your emotions at this instant? What are you feeling? It sounds pedantic. It sounds, yeah, pedantic. What do you feel in this instant? Give it a second. Hungry, tired, doubtful, curious. What do you feel emotionally and physically? That's awareness. You have self-awareness. Now, how many times have you done that in the past 24 hours? Haven't. So practice. That's all it is. We have to practice. It's right there. We haven't practiced. Prahlad Maharaj says it has to start at a very young age. You read the story of Prahlad Maharaj. Brilliant. He took his classmates at the age of 5. He was teaching them dhyan meditation. Sit and think. how am I in this moment? The more you practice, it becomes habit and it becomes a way you're walking through life automatically aware in real time. My boss is doing this, but in real time, you know exactly where you sit. And whatever's coming out of their mouth, you can almost predict what's going to come out of their mouth because you're in a space where you're recognizing, you can see where that person is, you know where you're sitting, and you are able to choose your responses in real time. But it's just practice. The question you had was doubt. Yes. This is when, and it's beautiful because doubt is absolutely essential. And where there's doubt is because there's lack of knowledge. So just continue to do it. You don't know yourself. I'm not you. We don't know ourselves. We haven't sat, and I have no clue what's going to happen if Judson got up and slapped me across the face because I don't know myself on that level. A self-realized person knows that if Judson got up and slapped me across the, I know exactly what my response is going to be. I will choose it and I will engage accordingly. We around here have no idea what we're going to do if we were fired tomorrow. A self-realized person knows exactly how they will respond in any given situation. So the doubt is not inevitable. It's
a part of the process.
It's a part of the process, but it's just an indicator of what has to happen. It's an indicator of a lack of self-knowledge. So all you have to do, and we just did it, and it sounds, and people think, oh, but that's so easy. If it's so easy, it can't be, we have to pay $1,000 and go into a 2-week retreat to get self-realized. No, you moron, just sit and you're self-realized. If you just, self-realization is the nature of the soul. It's the distractions that are the problem. You eliminate the distractions, the default setting of the Atman is self-realization. The problem is the world, the stuff, and not the world. The world is just energy. Is that we were taught from little story. My youngest daughter. Oh my good Lord in heaven! I was at the time I was a soccer coach, so I had to take both I had to coach a soccer game at the time, and I had my daughter with me. She was still in the crib, and so of course she started crying, and I have her little binky. So she was asleep and the game was going on, and then and then I could shoot the ball, and then it woke her up, and you got up, the binky fell out of her mouth. So so I knew. I mean, parents, it's the binky. Take the put it back in the mouth, go back to sleep. That binky is the issue. We have been taught from a very young age, just put a binky in it. In other words, how to cover over a little bit of discomfort, put a binky in it. Give it this, give it a little bit. We haven't been taught how to go. Of course, I'm not saying don't give your child a binky. That's not what I'm saying. But the same mentality we carry into adulthood because we haven't been trained as children to stop and be aware of what we're going through. Oh no, just put a binky in it. So we're going around with these binkies, and when something happens, our job is taken away. It's like a binky coming out of our mouth, and we're chasing another binky. Stop. To hell with the binky. Doesn't mean you don't get another job. It doesn't mean you don't engage with the world around you. But just know who Arjuna asked Krishna this question about the self-realizing. He asked 5 questions. How does he sit? How does he walk? How does he see? What does he eat? And something like that. He's not asking, does he walk with the limp and does he eat, whatever. He's asking, how does a self-realized walk through the world with all of these things happening in the world? How does the self-realized sit? In other words, what is his capacity to deal with all these things? Or does he sit in stability, or is he riled up when things come at him or her? Krishna says that individual walks and sits as a lotus leaf on water. No matter what the waves are doing, the lotus leaf is always on top. Water splashes on it and it rolls right off. It doesn't mean the lotus leaf doesn't go up with the wave and down with the wave. It means it's untouched by the wave. It rides the wave, up and down, up and down. That's what a self-realized person does. Jesus is stapled to the cross, up and down the wave, untouched. The consciousness is untouched by what's happening. That's the self-realized. So to go back to your 2 points, and those are the questions of the satsang. How? We just haven't practiced it. And it can happen, you can do it instantaneously. But the practice is the practice. We have to choose it. And the more we do it, and that's why I call it the sadhana of self-realization. It's that easy, it's that close, it's that simple. The problem is practice. Speaking of practice, I was listening to a motivational something by someone, and they were giving an example of a famous basketball player who he would the numbers were staggering. The person would shoot like 200 shots in basketball in practice, but in the games he would shoot and he would hit like 30 or 40%, which is a high percentage in a game. So according to the math, he practiced something like 200,000 shots in his career, just in practice, to make 400 in a game. So the practice is such, a whole lot of practice to get a high percentage in a game when it matters. The practice is what's the issue. We have to practice. There's no way around it. But the practice is very easy. Just like the basketball, just go and just practice. And you miss, and you miss. But of course, the self-realization is different, so the example is not quite sticking. But the issue is we have to practice, and it's so easy. We simply, what we did is it. It requires nothing else. I can assure you it doesn't. It's not magic. It's not hocus pocus. It's that simple. The problem is we don't do it continually, daily. It's awareness. Okay. Dorothy.
Say that I think also I think people are preconditioned from the time they're young and from whatever religious practices or whatever readings or whatever life gurus or whatever they have, to think that enlightenment to be enlightened you have to lead a very austere type of life. You like, how could I be enlightened if I live like homeowner type style life? I'm an everyday person. I'm not this austere monk who's like, I think sometimes we have this idea that to be enlightened, we have to give up a lot of
What did you
like daily lifestyle habits, which I don't think is necessarily true. I think, anybody can be enlightened. But I think that there's a lot of preconceived assumptions out there that we can't be because we're not this monk in a monastery, or we're not, we've got to go to the grocery store to get groceries, or we have to discipline our kids, or we have to do this, or what, or our friends are asking us to go here, and if we go here, does that mean like we're not enlightened anymore? Like, we can't be enlightened if we're going out with our friends here. Like, I think adjusting some of those choices and concepts in our mind is also a big piece of the process.
Yes. It's my golden light to tell people enlightenment is right there. That can be, nefarious people will use that idea to gain followers and pay me, I'll give you enlightenment. People who are more innocent but want to help, they misinterpret what enlightenment is and they share that. But a key problem is a word, attachment. We hear throughout Buddhism, Hinduism, this idea of don't be attached. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, detachment. And we think detachment means going to Africa and helping people find water. And I'm in like, Hitchcock. Attachment, that's where I believe this preconceived idea comes from that misleads people to think it has to be in the Himalayas. Because The truth is, yes, attachment is the problem. Attachment, as defined, means that to which we are attached has control over us. That's all. So when the scriptures, when the Vedas, I won't talk about Buddhism, I don't know. But when the Vedas talk about attachment and detachment, they're talking what has control over you and what does not. Because if it has control over you, you don't have choice.
How do you detach from your children? Like, you cannot detach.
Does your child have control over you?
Obviously, the way these days the kids are brought up.
Now, I am not going to answer that question because the relation between you and your child is very, very unique, very personal. But I will say this.
These days the kids are brought up differently, you know,
Yes.
and it's not their fault, you know. It's like at the turn of a button you have stuff, you know.
Yes.
And when we were growing up, it was different. There
Yes.
were expectations.
Mhm.
So it's our fault that we lowered the bar.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, but you cannot still, it's your DNA. You have to be attached to it. Right?
Okay. What define attachment? Being attached to your child. This is very good because Krishna tells Arjuna to be detached from family, and it screws up everyone's interpretation of the Gita. So let's slow down.
And he's standing in a war field,
Mhm.
like a battlefield. So we are not in that situation.
Sure.
We are in a situation where we are just, you know, leading life.
Yes.
You know, so there is a difference. You know, he was told to be detached from his children,
Mhm.
and that is a different thing. Like, you know, give up the. I mean, I don't know, but how to detach from somebody who is your family member?
Okay.
I have an example.
Go.
Like Nikhil is very stubborn child and he's very strong headed. So if he has a fight with another kid and I am there, how should I decide? I don't know the whole situation. Should I take my kid's side or the other kid's side? How do I detach myself from that and take a decision on that?
Very good. Okay. So let's talk about, remember we talked about harm, injury, and all these things? Oh, we have a question. I'll come to your question, Daniel. Oh, there's another. Oh, okay. I'll come to your question, Daniel, after we talk about this a bit about attachment. Attachment. So attachment, as defined in Vedic scriptures, is when something has control over you. Now, your interest as a mother, as a parent, is the well-being of the child. Now, that well-being can be defined in so many different places. Is it coming from a place of trauma? Then is your reaction genuinely to the well-being of the child? You don't know because you're coming from a place of trauma. So the attachment that you have to a child, when you are coming from a place of trauma, that attachment is actually more harmful than not. So when we talk about it, when Krishna talks about attachment, he's talking about making sure that the connection to the child is about what is beneficial. A self-realized person can influence from a level not from trauma, not from anger, not from past experiences, and can identify instantaneously what is beneficial for that child.
Right now.
Right now and whenever. Now, he, being unconditioned, will see, oh, you're acting out of attachment. You're actually acting out of self-realization. Attachment doesn't mean you walk away and leave your child to bleed on a playground. Detachment simply means that whatever the child is going through, you are in a self-realized state. You have awareness of what is actually needed for the child's well-being. Even if the child disagrees, mommy, you're never fair. But from a self-realized place, you recognize that what the child, what your son needs is this type of action. But if I'm a parent that is traumatized because my mom never hugged me, and the child says, you're never fair to me, I'm influenced by that trauma. So then rather than properly teaching it, I go in, oh, you're right, you're right, you're right. It doesn't help the child. So attachment is not about doing away with the child or not getting involved. Attachment means what is controlling you in that situation. If the self-realized person is controlled by, if you will, or is manifesting love, always manifesting love. So what's happening in the relationship is going to come through a place of love, not anger, not trauma, not anything else. So in that sense, that's detachment. The individual is detached from the trauma, the control of anger, the control of so many other things. The detachment from that so that the individual can manifest love in the relationship. Externally, it's hard to recognize. It looks like attachment. It looks like, who knows what it looks like? It doesn't matter. From a self-realized place, that's what matters.
Because from a self-realized place, that can also mean discipline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It can mean discipline. It can mean a hug. It can mean a whole host of things. And that's why you never know. Only another self-realized person will recognize, that person, something's going on here. Yes.
Because I have grown-up children, not children. So when my child is hurt in whatever way, but it's beyond my control, I feel hurt. And sometimes Russian thinks I'm too attached. I should let them handle whatever. I do let them handle. But I continue to stay in that hurt mode because my child is hurt due to whatever reason. Okay? So is that okay?
Are you responding to your husband's disapproval because you saw your father disapprove of your mother and there's a trauma coming from that, so he said something and you freak out? The question is, are you aware?
I am aware that I am hurt and I can't do, it's beyond my control. But my child is hurt. Because of his hurt, I'm hurt as a mother. Probably you can feel that, right? If that's attachment, then I am attached. Even though if I am with awareness.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here's something I want to quickly add here. So if, and this is a similar conversation with having a weird situation. With
Mom and dad, you're having some difficulties.
I'll give you context. So she doesn't discipline as much, or when she tries to discipline, they finagle their way out of the disciplinary act, right? So that's the problem I'm facing, that I always become the bad guy, even though she gets the most time with the kids. So obviously they're more attached to her, and then she doesn't discipline. So it's a double whammy for me as a dad. So anyway, so to respond to your thing, the way I look at it is, if I'm self-aware, I would know what my kid's personality is. If his kid's personality is that he is going to stress about whatever the situation beyond everyone's control is, there is nothing I can do to stop. Secondly, if the only way for that kid throughout his life, the lessons are learned by going through the experience, there's nothing you can do anyways. So both things could help you come to the self-realization, whether, stressing anyways is not going to help you, but can you solve the issue? Or, that's the way I would look at it.
I would add to that even if you don't know, even if the self-realized person doesn't know, they will go into the situation without doubt. That's one thing Krishna repeats to Arjuna. I'm giving you this knowledge so that you can act without doubt, without asamshaya. Asamshaya comes up in the Bhagavad Gita like 30 times. But this knowledge will enable you to act without doubt. It doesn't mean without knowing or without knowledge. You can come into a situation and not know exactly what to happen, but when you choose to act, you won't have doubt because you're coming from a place of self-knowledge. And so you will come into a space of confidence that no matter what comes my way, as long as I continue to act and choose from a place of self-realization, even if the outcome seems a little tense, I know I will always act from this space. Anger does not have control of me. All these things do not control how I act. So even if the action seems difficult, seems hard, self-realization does not mean easy. It does not mean easy. We want self-realization to be, like this. That's not self-realization. Self-realization can be rough, but it's also true. It's the right thing. There's no doubt, but that requires complete self-awareness, a habit of self-awareness.
So this takes us back full circle to my initial question, that self-realization is harsh on your soul. And
Carry on.
let's say,
In the short term.
but I feel it might also be in the long term. And here's how I would present it. The use case is you are self-realized, you let go of all your dreams, and you live the life with a purpose that you were living with, or you're designed to live with, whatever, right? And then you go old, right? And let's say you're 65 years old and you're or 75 years old and your health is deteriorating fast, you're about to die. Does a self-realized person who has lived the life in that fashion for 20, 30, 40 years at the end say that was a good decision, or would say, oh man, I could have had a lot more engaging life with this world if I wasn't just always holding myself back as a self-realized person?
I think we touched upon this in the last satsang.
They did, yeah.
Self-realization means you give up your dreams.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it is.
Right.
You can have your dreams and be self-realized.
Actually, you enjoy more.
You're just more aware and more cognizant
Right,
of,
right.
of your choices in your dreams and stuff, right?
Yes.
Like, so,
Yes.
Mahanti, this is
I just want to put it, because we talked about this and I didn't get to address in the last satsang. When I said at the time, there is no such thing as regret. A self-realized person has no regret, because a self-realized person lives fully. Everyone, because they're self-aware, they know this is me 100%. So they make choices, and people, why are you making that choice? Oh, because I was headhunted to get a job in a particular industry in management. And I was texting my daughter, oh, I have to choose between a career in politics and a career in this particular industry. What do I do? What do I do? And she was saying, you always say, follow your heart. Yeah, sweetie, you're correct. Yeah. And immediately we talk about doubt gone. And there subsequently is no regret. So in a self-realized, and I'll come back to you, you had something. In the person, and that's what Krishna answered to Arjuna, a self-realized person, even the journey towards self-realization, where, sometimes you're self-realized, sometimes you're not, stutter, stop. That process, there is never regret, because you are existing in your full and complete self. You're not choosing something that's not you. That's the definition of self-realized. It is not me. I know who I am. That's not me. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go this way. And people are like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's me. Krishna told Arjuna, in the very beginning, he says, you know what? You are a Kshatriya. You're going to go to war no matter what, to be honest. And we see all throughout Arjuna's life, he does nothing but go to battle. I mean, he wasn't a warmonger, but whenever there was a situation, he fought it off. And when he went to Sparta, when he went to Matsya, everywhere, he put on his boots, yeah, bring it. That was when he's in self-realization, there is no regret. We can live, in fact, only a self-realized person can live a regret-free life. Everybody else who's not self-realized, should I do the doubt? I think you had something.
So I had an example of, I guess, like thinking about what you were saying about regrets or whatever, or what constitutes self-realization or not. So an example is a lot of people, I think when you're self-realized, you have to choose. Okay, you're at work, your friends are going out bowling, there's going to be drinking. As a self-realized person, you think in your head, I shouldn't be drinking, I don't drink, how am I going to manage, how am I going to go out? So I in the past, I would just say I'm not going out, right? So this past month we had a team party for the office, and they were going bowling, and everybody in the office was talking about what drinks they were having, how much they were going to drink, like how fun they were going to have, this and that, and everybody just assumed I wasn't going to go because I don't drink. So then when everybody was signing up, I signed up to go, and people were like all surprised. And so I went, and like, I was a little, like, in the environment, I was a little uncomfortable because everybody was drinking. And, some people can get annoying. But for the most part, like, the focus of being there was team building and bowling. And so I participated and I was part of it. But in my mind, I was thinking, there's, from an outsider's perspective, and how we're conditioned to think sometimes, people might think, oh, she went out drinking and bowling and she's doing this and that, whatever, whatever. But I know that I maintained my, myself, I maintained my code of ethics, I maintained my choices, integrity, everything, even though I was associating with the group, and in some ways maybe was an example in the group. And so I was there, and I think sometimes we think that we can't participate in the world if we're self-realized. And I don't think that's necessarily true.
No, that is the story of the Gita. Krishna is Arjuna. Be self-realized and go to war. That's a lotus leaf untouched by water. Riding the waves.
Example in the environment, right?
You can be the example if you choose to. That's another thing about being self-realized. Some people want to take up the mantle of being the example. Some people don't.
Yeah.
But that's a choice a self-realized know to make. Other people, should I go to be an example? Should I not go? But what if I'm not an example? Doubt they're not self-realized. A self-realized person will go or not based on them.
Yeah.
Their personal self-understanding and self-awareness. And when they go, they go. When they don't, they don't. And it's not, and they don't regret one way or the other. They go and they exist in it.
People.
Sorry?
They don't let other people make them doubt.
Yes.
Like,
they're
I went out
self-situated.
with this group of people and they were doing this, but even though I wasn't doing that, I was bad association, and like,
that's how attachment
people,
has control.
Like, yeah. So I think being firm enough in your decision that I can go and I can feel comfortable about the fact that I went, no matter what. Anyways, it's because I know what I did and why I was there.
Yeah, and that's how attachment. We're attached to how our coworkers think of us, and they control our decision making. We're attached to how our children think of us, so they control how we discipline or not. That's when Krishna says, don't be attached. Exist in self-realization, and let that be your guide. And there will never be regret. It's when you try to manipulate and try to be, because you're being pulled by all of these various types of attachments and traumas, that you're always second guess. Did I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Self-realized person realizes there was no other thing I could have done to be true to my integrity. If I had done anything else, I would not have been me. I would not have been self-aware. And from that space that we live our best lives. Not easy. Not supposed to be easy. Not whether it's supposed to or not is irrelevant. Easy is irrelevant. It's your life, and you will never have regret from a place of self-realization. Let's go to this question that Daniel had.
Just one.
Oh, but jump in. Then we'll go to Daniel's question.
Would you think that some of those people who were drinking are self-realized?
Good question. Very good question.
Because I will tell you my story later. So we answer that question.
I want to come back
to
to this.
answer his question too, because I'm that age, which you were saying.
Right. I think you got my point.
Shall we go to Daniel? Come back to
Daniel.
Daniel asks, you all can see it, very good. Why didn't Jesus strike back when he was being tortured and killed? Of all the miracles and knowledge he had, he certainly could have stopped it. Being who he was, Krishna would never succumb or allow himself to be challenged in that way, to be humiliated. Okay. My answer to this, I'm not a Christian, but looking at it from the view of what self-realized in and is not, it's similar to the story of Ambarish and Durvasa Muni. The individual Ambarish, Jesus, it's not a question of it's not a question of forgiveness, anger, upset, humiliation. That doesn't even register on the level of self-realization. Jesus, Ambarish, they're just saying ignorance and knowledge, ignorance and knowledge. And perhaps I will choose to allow this to carry on because I want to be the example for my disciples. So allow it to go on. Jesus is, according to the story, asking the Supreme, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I think that's less an indication, less a statement or request to God, and it's more a statement or request to other people, to us, to look. Jesus is saying, I'm forgiving. All of you recognize it's about knowledge and ignorance. Ambarish, the demons coming in Ambarish. There's no question of forgiveness. Now, and this is coming back to the point where it doesn't mean the perpetrator should not be corrected, right? Vishnu sent the Sudarshan Chakra to chase Durvasa Muni. It doesn't mean the perpetrator should not give a nice one, right? It doesn't mean that that shouldn't happen. It doesn't mean it should not be corrected, but it has to be corrected from a place of self-realization. Because if the person trying to do the correction is beset by personal trauma, hatred, anger, they're going to use vengeance. They're going to go in with a hammer when a scalpel was necessary. They're going to go in and carpet bomb an area when that was not necessary because they're coming from a place of trauma. The self-realized are the best disciplinarians. The kings went to Gurukula. They went to the same school that Brahmins went to. Brahmins mean they recognize a type of Brahma Jignasa. They have attained Brahma. They've realized, they're self-realized. Kings, little princes, little Kartiks and Nikhils, they went to the same Gurukula to come out self-realized. So when they pull out a sword to chop, they're coming from a place of self-realization. They cannot pull out a sword coming from a place of anger, vengeance, Kam, Krodh, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Those persons are not to be given leadership. They're not to be given any leadership. Of course, in this day and age, everyone's, the biggest moron is the biggest leader. Anyways, self-realization, those who are self-realized are the best disciplinarians. They are the best because they're not coming from a place of, oh, my dad did this to me, I'm going to, destroy all people who are like this. Let's go to, and we're going to come back to you.
Yeah. Oh, to answer.
Well, I just want to finish. So why Krishna would never succumb or allow himself to be challenged in that way? Actually, Krishna, in the stories of Krishna is a perfect example of, having foolishness roll off his back. It was a story of Shishupal. Some of you may know this Shishupal. Shishupal was Krishna's nephew. He was some relation to Krishna. And Shishupal hated Krishna. And it was a prophecy that Shishupal's mother found out that said, oh, Shishupal was born with a third eye and 6 arms and some deformities. And the sadhus of the time said, well, if you take this, the prophecy said, if you take this baby and put it on the lap of the person who is going to kill your child will be identified when the eye will disappear and the deformities will correct themselves, right? So the mother was, oh my God, first of all, I don't want my child to be deformed, and who's going to kill my son? So she took child, and every time someone would come, she would put the child in the person's lap and see if anything happened. Nothing happened. Okay, this person's not going to kill my son. So Krishna came. Krishna was a young boy. He was, at the time, he was like, Shishupal, baby Shishupal's cousin or something like that. So the mother put Shishupal on Krishna's lap. The eye disappeared. The deformities corrected themselves. Krishna's going to kill her child. So she said, please, Krishna, don't kill my child. Don't kill my child. Don't kill my child. Krishna says, very well, I will tolerate anything he says to me. Any insults he gives more than 100 times. Later on, another place, they've all grown up. Shishupal is in a situation he's insulting, swearing at Krishna. And Krishna saying, Shishupal, I promise your mom I will not kill you, but only to a certain extent. Shishupal's going on. He reaches 100, Krishna kills him. In the commentary of that story, Krishna is described as Bhagwan in the Mahabharata. In many places, he's described as Bhagwan. Bhagwan means one who has 6 particular qualities. One of those qualities is tyaga, which means renunciation. In other words, Krishna was not he was not affected by the insults given by Shishupal. It was not those insults that in any way bothered Krishna. He was above the insults of Shishupal. The only issue was the promise he had given to his mother, because Shishupal had gone through the world causing havoc. And many people had asked Krishna, can you deal with this person? Krishna said, I gave a promise. So he would not touch Shishupal to honor that promise. But the interaction between Shishupal and Krishna was never based on Krishna feeling insulted by Shishupal's words. So even Krishna, to answer Daniel your question, Krishna is unaffected by personal attacks, personal issues. However, again, going back to the point that perpetrators must be corrected. When Krishna chopped off Shishupal's head, everyone witnessed that from Shishupal's body, his soul emerged and joined into Krishna's body. In other words, Shishupal was given liberation. Shishupal was given higher state of being after that had happened. So the self-realized always acts in a way that uplifts the situation as much as they can possibly do so. Now, I'm not Krishna, so obviously it may not be my place to correct a Shishupal. It's not my place. But as a self-realized person, I will know that. I will have the self-awareness to know I cannot correct Shishupal. I have to go call the police to correct, because I have self-awareness. If I don't have self-awareness, I try to jump into a situation because I remember my elder brother, I don't have one. I remember my elder brother beating me. I have this trauma. I'm going to jump in and try to rectify the situation. Now, I actually might rectify the situation. I actually might. It's possible that even coming from a place of trauma, I jump into a situation, I may pull apart and bring justice. And that's very good for that singular situation. I may be lucky if I did not cause additional harm, if I did not jump in and cause, what do they call it? Collateral damage, right? That'd be lucky, right? But even then, even if I did benefit the situation by pulling the two people apart, or whatever it was, that's only in relation to that singular situation. What's going to happen tomorrow? And I jump in with anger, calm, grove, and so on. The self-realized person, no matter what situation they enter from a self-realized space, they will always know without doubt how they should or should not, very important, how they should or should not interact in that situation. No, this is not for me to do. I'm not Jesus Christ. This is not for me to do. So self-realization brings individual certainty, knowledge, understanding, and acting from that space, there is never regret. And we live a truly fulfilled existence. That is the only way to have a fulfilled existence, is living from a self-realized space. Your question, I think you had a juicy one coming up.
No, I didn't have a juicy one. Do you have a few minutes?
We have,
I have Chandra's question, because I'm that age. He asked, well, once you reach 69,
okay.
and you say, oh, I wasted my life in self-realization. I didn't get all my fun.
Right?
Right?
Essentially, right? Because self-realization leads to better decision making. So you're giving up all the things like,
So first thing all of us, Dorothy says, self-realization doesn't mean you give up all the fun in life. You can still have fun. Question is, how do you look at that fun? I think. I mean, I'm not a self-realized person in any sense of the word. And I think I still don't understand, despite all what you have said, on self-realization. So one of the personal story of mine is that when I was 11, I started, my mother used to read Gita, as I think she was reading it at the park every day. So she would read one chapter every day. I don't know how much, I think one chapter. So I started reading because she was reading it. So I would read one chapter every day. When all it was over, then I would read even the, in the back of the Gita, there are artis. I used to read that and then start all over again. So in about 2 months, the whole thing will be done because I used to read the Mahatma one day also, 36 days for that and 10 days for. So that and there was the 11, and I think, well, through college also I did that. But I might have stopped once I got into medical school. Because I lack of time or wanting to go early, or maybe I was reading off and on. But I was reading as a part. Like I didn't imbibe what was written there, although a couple of things stick in my mind. One thing was this: always self-driven. Arjuna asked, "How does a self-realized person? What is the sign then of a self-realized person?" And the second thing which sticks in my mind is, then how you get there? And he said, संसार के विषयों से वैराग्य और मेरे में ध्यान. So you have to detach from, the worldly things. And I guess you can take it in whatever way, but, I think these are the two things which he suggested. And second is bhakti, mere mein dhyan being, being me. But I never imbibed that, in a way. I used to read it as a path. But there were some things which I think which were maybe, I don't know from where it came from. So I give you an example. Two examples. So my father used to go to temple every Tuesday, so I used to go with him. Now he was in a good position, position, so the priest will shower, give him a garland, give him this, give him that, and then I'll see the priest taking prasad from other people, other, regular people, not because somebody had a small envelope. He would do this and throw like this, not even properly, So when I used to go alone, at that age, I was 15 or 16 at the time, when my father was out of town or something, then I would go my needs myself. I would not give the envelope to the priest. What I would think was, well, if he can take priest, why can't he take mine? So I will take two patasas or banana from my bag and keep it in the, and I will never give them to the priest. And I don't know where they came from. My father wasn't very ritualistic. He always, priest thing, but I was a little bit on the, not that I disrespected him, but I thought he disrespected me. And the second example was, for somehow, when I was in 6th or 7th grade, it thought to my mind, I get whatever I ask God. And something I lost, one example, in big soccer ground, I can never find it. The next day I'm walking there, I found it. And a couple of other things like this happened. So one day I said to my mother, I said, God gives me everything what I want. She said, then why don't you ask for this much money in lottery or something? So no, you don't ask like that. He doesn't give unreasonable things. He doesn't accept to unreasonable demand. So these were my growing up things, but then I got to medical school and we got into all those, fun as young boys. And that fun has continued to this day. The point I was trying to make was, no, I'm at 69. So we have, our kids are grown up and there's off and on. I sometimes listen to this, listen to Maha. Online, I listen to a lot of different people. But one of the things which, if not having regrets is the yardstick, then I think I'm a self-realized. I don't have regret about anything I did. But on the second part, whether I can see the situations. So right now, we had put some dakshina for Mahaji in well. And I don't know where I forgot at home. So last 2 hours, I'm just obsessing about that in well.
He thinks, maybe through the trash, so he thinks that.
So no, I don't know. What I mean is, I can't get that off my hands. I mean, even I'm listening to you, it is still in my head. I mean, I'm not detached.
Like Hint actually envelope.
That time, he said, I said, let it come. It's okay. It's okay.
So it doesn't come easy. It's not that easy, but you should do whatever I think. And from my experience, what I would suggest is, or just do, forget about self-realization. Just do what your heart wants it to do. I mean, not you don't want to go kill anybody, but
Right.
you know, as long as you don't hurt anybody, I think you do whatever you want to do at this age, and every age is different. But you're lucky. You're at this age. You are into, you're trying to find some knowledge. So that itself is so. But don't detach yourself from the fun of this world either.
I have a similar thing, like you said, God gives you everything. I say that Kanichi give me everything, but he tests that I am ready for that path or not. It might be later in my life whenever he gives it, but he gives me whatever I want. So he sees what you're doing. Are you supposed to be there or not? And then he gives.
Right.
That's what I teach my kids also. If you're doing a hard work, don't think about it that, I'm not getting it now. Why did I lose my match? Think about it. You keep doing it. When you're ready for it, that is when he'll give you that. Yes, this is now. Now you're ready for it. You did your hard work. Now you the result.
Very, very good. Very, very important. The result comes when the results are
It's supposed
supposed
to be
to.
ready for it.
Yes. Another thing that came to mind is the idea, not the idea, but the worry, which Arjuna had as well, that pursuit of self-realization will lead to us missing out on the fun of life. One of my, I wouldn't say goals, but one of the things I keep in mind when I try to share my understanding of spirituality is that there's nothing more fun than being self-realized. Now, and each individual will experience and define that fun differently. And I like the way you say, don't give up something that's fun. But I would add to that, know why you're choosing it. That's the difference. Because an addict will choose fun. They're addicted. They're causing harm. They think it's fun, but it's an addiction. So absolutely choose fun. Simply know why. That's all self-realization is. And you mentioned, I don't have any regrets, so I'm self-realized. Yes. That's a very, very important indicator. And we gloss over that.
Would it be choosing that addiction as a satisfying the inner issues they have? Then what for them, they're self-aware that we're doing it wrong. So we're doing that addiction because I'm not feeling good. I am maybe depressed or something, but that's why they're doing that addiction. So the self-awareness is still there.
Now we add Icha Shakti. Are they choosing it? Or is the alcohol choosing them? Do they have agency? Or are they being dictated to by their craving for alcohol? Now, that has to be explored by the individual. And we know the example doesn't go all the way because we know addiction is inherently bad. But the question is self-awareness. A person, and that's what we know when people get over addictions. They have the self-awareness to know that actually, no, this has control over me. Now, I know it's covering up a childhood trauma. So in a way, you're right, that's self-awareness. But they don't have Icha Shakti. They don't have agency. It's not a choice. It's an impulse. And it is that impulse that differentiates Pashu from Purush. Animals exist on impulse. Purusha has agency, choice. And it's in exercising agency that is the only differentiator between Pashu and Purush. So awareness is a good start, a necessary start. But now with that awareness, we should then, do we have the capacity to choose a way forward?
So it's like an alcohol like saying, okay, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink tomorrow. I'm going to choose the day when I drink. That's when you're,
And choose why.
right.
Choose
Choose why. And
Why is very important.
Right.
Everyone knows I love that book, starting with why. Why is very, very important. Exploring this part of our sadhana, exploring why. Why is, and why will unravel so much of our inner issues. You chase up a why in your life, you will go to bed crying. That the why will reveal so much. And in the case of addictions, we oftentimes need help. Like in the case of addiction, but at least if there's self-awareness, we can go, I need help, please. I need a therapist to help me with my addiction. That's a very good start. And with that, yeah, then we can develop agency to be able to choose one way or the other. And we actually may lose, right? Addicts can never be around alcohol. I'm not saying be around, but they cannot take the one drink. I don't talk about alcoholism because I don't know. That's a whole other issue. But what I mean to say is that's why Prahlad Maharaj says the Purusha, the human state of being, is so valuable. Because if we mess it up, we go back into samsara. And who knows when we'll come back to have the capacity to have the ability to choose. Outside the human form, there's no ability to choose. You are buffeted by prakriti, material nature. Animals just go with the flow. That's why the human form of life is so essential. So yes, don't think, oh, this is fun, I like to do it. I'm not advocating anything here. The Pandavas were not vegetarian. There is no record in Mahabharata that the Pandavas were vegetarian. There is no record of the Pandavas not drinking alcohol.
Ram was not vegetarian. Yes. He used to do himself.
There's no record. Exactly. There's no Balaram had a few. I'm not recommending anything. This is live. I'm not recommending. A whole lot of trouble. I know. I trust me. If my friends in ISKCON,
even now, when my dad was in the armed forces, and they were told to eat protein.
Okay, but let's pump the brakes on this. Why? Why? Awareness, awareness, awareness. Control. Do you have agency? Know why you're doing it. Do you have agency? Do you have choice? The Pandavas also got up and walked away from everything at the age of 50. So don't say, yeah, I'm going to do this, do this, do this. Okay, we'll do that. When you turn 50, can you walk away? No, I can't. So don't talk. They got up and they walked away at the drop of a hat. That's detachment at the drop of a hat. So be aware. Is it, oh no, I'm going to choose it because it's really nice. Okay, well, can you give it up at the drop of a hat? No, I really, really like it. You know what I mean? It's not about if it's fun or not. It's not about if it's fun. The question is, why are you doing it? It's why? Do you have agency? Can you choose otherwise? Are you controlling the impulse, or is the impulse controlling you? If you're controlling the impulse, self-realized. If the impulse is controlling you, hush you. You're an animal. Sorry, I'm sorry. I better slow down.
So how do you get if you're so detached, then how do you reach success then? Then you will be detached with the success also.
Yes, open up a whole new realm. Exactly, because success is not something that you achieve over here. Success is existing as the perfect you. That is success. Your success manifests. You live, you exist. Every moment you're successful.
See, part of me agrees with you,
Yeah.
but that's where the conflict comes in.
Please.
If you talk to all the successful businessmen, I don't think they would say success is the perfect me.
Right.
They would say success is that I dreamt of establishing this business and I've done it, right? or I dreamt I wanted to achieve this, I've achieved this, right? So they're driven by a material goal in life. So that's where she's coming
Right, so
from.
detached.
If you are detached, then you don't have material goals.
So many.
Oh, no. Yeah, this is good. We're getting somewhere. Yeah.
Because my Nikhil says that I want to be a surgeon, and that's now his path, okay, and that's how we're giving him activities. Okay, do you want to do this, because you want to be there. So for him, that success is there, and that's how he wants to reach there. But then, if he's not attached to it, then why will he go there? There is no path then.
It's not the achievement of the goal. It's the pursuit of existing on that path, going towards it. It doesn't mean that attachment doesn't mean that you do not have a goal. That's another really important distinguisher. A detachment doesn't mean you don't have goals. You can have numerous goals. What detachment means is that if you do not achieve that goal, you look at the world differently. Anger becomes your default setting because you didn't achieve that goal. You can achieve a goal and great, you achieve the goal. But if the goal is ripped away, taken away from you, what happens? How do you act when you do not achieve that goal? Can you exist without that? Some people can, some people can't. The self-realized can pursue a goal. Arjuna, after the Bhagavad Gita, went on to win. But if he had failed, he would have still remained self-realized. So it's not so attachment does not mean you do not pursue a goal. Attachment means that if you did not achieve that goal, what would be your state of mind? If you do not achieve your goal, guess what? You are still 100%. In Upanishad, we are perfectly complete now when we haven't fulfilled the goal, and we are perfectly complete if we fulfill it or not. A self-realized person, even if I don't fulfill that goal, I'm still perfectly complete and I have no regrets. Pursue the goal, but the goal is not the determinant of my completeness as an individual. Now, when we talk about people who my success is in achieving this, now we come to the issue of svadharma. Svadharma means my own nature, my inclination, who I am. That's self-realization. So Jatin self-realized. His goal is to a multinational corporation. I look at him, Jatin, yes. I want that goal. I'm gonna have a multinational corporation. He's self-realized. Him pursuing that is his self, and if he doesn't, he's still Purnam, he's still complete. He is not fazed by not completing that. If he completes it, yes, I completed. Great. Now I'm pursuing that. It is not, I have a yearning in a different direction. I want to teach Bhagavad Gita. But no, success is this. I'm attached, this becomes an attachment that determines my feeling of success, my feeling of completion, my feeling of being successful. So going back to the point I'm trying to make is success. So an attachment does not extinguish our drive to achieve something. It doesn't. We think it is. And that's the problem with a lot of self-realization. We think self-realization is going to pour water. That's the same thing Arjuna said. Will my pursuit of all this gyan pour water on my desires to do things? And so we talked about this. We talked about how a lot of spiritualists say desire is bad, desire is bad, desire. Pish-tosh. There's nothing wrong with desire. When you hear, and quote me, if someone tells you, some sadhu says desire is bad, give up desire, tell them Mahavishnu said, no, it's not. And don't, you can quote me, but the reason why is because desire is not bad. It's our attachment to desire, where when our desire is not fulfilled, we freak the hell out.
But then people say, if you want to manifest, you make that vision board. You put, okay, I want to buy this boat. This is the house which I want to get. So you're attached to those things, and that's why you work for that.
Yes, if you're attached for it, and then what happens when you don't get that house? What happens if you don't get it?
But they say if you want to reach that manifestation stage, you have to be attached. You have to feel that you already achieved it. That's how you manifest that to yourself. That's how you create your energy around you. That you got to get that.
They're using the wrong word. I say pishtosh. Because if you are attached to it, when you don't get it, that's when you're overwhelmed with the negative connotations. You can put all of your energy into achieving something without being attached. Absolutely. Attachment simply means that if you don't, attachment is indicative by its absence. In other words, you know that you're attached when that thing is taken away from you and you freak out. So you can still strive. There's no appetite and starvation. Appetite is an energy. Appetite is good. Appetite means you're healthy. Well, I went to Gurukula, and we had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. for the morning Mangal puja. And of course, we were kids. Oh, I'm sick. Are you hungry? Yes, I'm very hungry. You're not sick. Appetite is health. Desire is healthy. Desire is healthy. A spiritual process that says desire is not healthy, they are wrong. Desire is the nature of cognizance. Only a piece of wood doesn't have desire. Desire is healthy. It's attachment that's the problem. Attachment means that if your desire is not fulfilled, what happens? If you go on a killing spree, that was an attachment. If you desire, because whether or not you desire, you can strive for it. And really, let's be honest here. There are more things out of your control that will determine whether or not you fulfill your desire. Far more things out of your control. Your control is simply what you do. The economy, your next door neighbor, the idiot who's drunk driving down the street who hits you with the car. So many things are out of your control. Your desire is not the issue. Have your desire. It's attachment. So understand attachment means what do you do when that attachment is not fulfilled? If you can exist in a feeling, in a sense, in a state of I'm still perfectly complete, it wasn't an attachment. The desire is fine. But if you do not or cannot fulfill that desire, or the desire is taken away and you freak out, you go into depression, you go into this, you go into that, you had an attachment. And now you've got a problem because now you have to go and find forgiveness. And then whoops, we're in the circle again, finding forgiveness, changing. Oh, I got to take a new, what's that? A career path. And oh my God. And it all falls to pieces. So desire big, desire huge. Know why? And be detached. So if you don't get that 12-bedroom house, you have no problem living in a studio.
Your family.
Exactly.
Just pretty much that.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Exactly.
Not for the house, happen in a 12-bedroom house, that's what she said.
No, actually, that happened.
There was a family, I think, they
Yes,
lost everything, and they were in $1 million house, and the
I mean, after, you don't realize at your age, but at our age, you realize we are just renters. Because in 10-20 years, it's going to be somebody else's house.
Correct.
Or I won't be able to enjoy all the rooms that I won't be able to do. And there's
Some things automatically.
automatically come, yeah. But you don't realize it like before. So you get very attached to the goal. And that's what he said, don't get attached to the outcome.
Desire can be very perfect tool for sadness. Because what I
Just a small
desire,
comment. Not many situations, every situation
We'll come back to that.
in your life is kind of difficult, surprises, and to be able to be magnanimous in that situation is very difficult. The perfect example being Ram. I think he had a life full of disasters. He was sent at his young age to his Gurukul. Then he became a prince. He was sent to that Vanvas. Then his wife got And then he had to fight a war. And then when he came back, then somebody made a comment and he had to. All the situations were like disastrous, but he was able to keep his uh, balance in that situation. I think Ram would be a perfect example of self-realization. But for people like us, it's quite difficult.
No, it is not that difficult. Okay, or she says like, are you a switch that somebody turn it on, that you start shouting, like you get angry? You are the switch. I mean, anybody can come and put the switch on, and then you are going like that. No, but you have to self-realization is practice. You mean
Right.
yeah, you have to practice. Why would I react to this person? He's an idiot, why would I react to this situation? It will only worsen the atmosphere in that building that time. Yeah.
He has a nice point when you describe Ra, and it's a very good example because we can look and see that Ra was a life of disasters. But while he was going through those disasters, there was Ramaja. No one else was affected by the disasters of his life because he's operating in self-realization. So whatever's happening to him, he does not become a dictator and destroy everyone's life around him. There's Ram Raja across the entire Bharatvarsh. But his life is an absolute 27 episode saga, right? Yes. You said
The kind of,
asked it.
yeah.
If it comes back, jump it in.
Just 2 points about
May I say something?
God's successes later on feel empty at some point. There are multiple instances of people living at the peak of their life when they achieve everything, feeling empty and then going in a different direction.
But is that the same emptiness you feel when you're retired, or is that the
No,
different?
no, emptiness of
That's a different one.
so just think about it. Think about it. Somebody wants to go to Mount Everest, right?
Right.
Once you get to Mount Everest, you have that delirious, rush. Then he comes back and then says, what next? Right? It's the same rush. Once they achieve their goal, then what next? And at some point, they're going to run out of what next. And then when they feel empty. So they are not, because they were only focused on external goals. So when the one external goal is achieved, they went to next goal. When that goal is achieved, they went to third goal. When the goals are out, then what should they do? What do they do now? When you run out of mountains to climb, what are you going to do?
May I say something?
Unless you're in touch with yourself. And those people were me. And there are, you can read stories about people, real people who at peak of their lives and it's not what I want.
Internal satisfaction is not there.
Internal satisfaction is not there. But they were doing it for external things like money, power, wealth. That doesn't give you satisfaction in the long run. So they look for something else.
Even
the other
are
part-
going back to India now, like all of them went back. Steve Jobs went to India. And
Well, that when he went in his younger age, when he was 18, after he achieved success after that.
yeah, but like even the Beatles went, because they realized that they're the best band in the whole nation. I mean the whole world. Sorry, and they realized that, oh God, it's all still empty inside. So let's go somewhere where you can get.
But the second part, which is hard, is to work without without the fruit of the action in mind. It's harder to do, but there's an athletics teams now, coaches are coaching player to not focus on the goal, focus on the play and play for fun. The reason being, when you're focused only on the goal, I have to come, this, I have to come, you're wasting your energy in just thinking about the goal and not putting effort right there. You're taking some of your energy away from that. And the second part is obviously, if you keep that in mind, that yes, I have this goal, I can work towards this goal, but if I don't get it, that's okay too. And I think it's a good teaching in the long term. We think that people will not work hard enough for their goal. Because they think, oh, okay, if we achieve, it's okay. If not achieve, it's okay. I think most people will still work towards their goals.
So, I very often think about this example of Guru Nanak, right? He lived a very pious life. At the beginning of his life, he achieved success in religious field. But then he retired from that life, and then he said, "You know what? I'm a commoner. I'm gonna do my own farming, and that's the life I'm gonna lead." And there are stories about people asking him that, how can you do this? How can you feel happy with this life? And you'd say, no, this is all I want. I don't need anything special. So I just feel like, what is the right time to start thinking about, okay, I need to maybe be more, not so much be attached to material things, or have material goals in life. Because the other aspect is, when your kids are growing up, and if they see you don't have material goals in life, they might be, demotivated by that, because they will come across other kids whose parents are giving a different type of education, or different type of philosophy is being shared with them.
So as Mahaji said, there is no reason not to have goals. You can. There's no reason.
Yes, there's no reason not to have a material goal. Go for it. Just know why. That's all. Just know why. Know you have the goal. There's a Sanskrit term called Ananda Maya Bhyasat. Ananda Maya means the soul. We are intrinsically pleasure driven. The soul, not just the body. The soul is pleasure seeking. It manifests through the bodies, through the eyes. We want to see this, see that. But the soul, the spirit being, is Ananda Maya. It is the energy of pleasure seeking. Going back to desire. So it's going to be expressed in the material world. This is a material reality. This is not fake. This exists. Have those material goals have nothing to do with the level of individual spirituality. Spirituality does not mean you do not have a desire to achieve $1 million. Have that desire. The issue is attachment. Have that desire. Do what you need to do to engage and to achieve that goal. But and this goes back to awareness, the practice of awareness. Know why. And if your motivation is because that's you, no, he is a farmer. That is him. There will not be any regret. If you're seeking $1 million because you want to, it's not necessarily you. You're fine with 100,000. Just throwing things out there. You're fine with $100, but you want to achieve $1 million because for whatever reason, but it's not you. Even if you achieve $1 million, you will not experience Ananda Maya because it's not you. Even if you achieve it. If you achieve 100,000, but it's you are aware that it is you on every single level. Your achievement of $100,000 is enough. And that, in my estimation, is the best example we can give to others. Know who you are. Be knowledgeable of who, otherwise your peers will determine what you do. The person next door will media will determine what should be your goal. So self-knowledge, self-awareness is essential. And again and again and again, it has nothing to do with becoming desireless. Have your desires, just be aware of why you have the desire. Is it a trauma? Is it a fear? Know that, and in the process of self-realization, you'll rise above it. And when you have self-realization, you know yourself. You know who you are. And remember, as individual souls, we have a unique nature, spiritual nature. We will know it, we will realize it, we will manifest it. And if we walk that path, all those desires will be in relation to that self-knowledge. The desires that spring up from self-realization, the desires that come from self-knowledge are pursue that. Pursue those desires that come from self-realization. Don't pursue a desire that comes from Jatan, who say you should be doing this. To hell with Jatan. To hell with that influence. Self-realization, we are in under Maya. So we're in self-realization, we're going to pursue pleasure. We are in under Maya. So as long as we are in self-realization, guarantee Ananda Maya will try to express itself, follow that. Desires will come. But don't put attachment on that. Because attachment means once it's taken away, anger will flood the space and you'll be driven by anger, and chase forgiveness and so on and so forth. Go for those desires. Go get them. It's attachment that's the issue. Yes.
I just want to share this a very amazing movie out right now called Cabrini at the theaters.
What's the spell?
CA?
CABRINA.
We saw it the other night and it is absolutely amazing. It is such a good follow-up to this discussion, I can't even tell you. It is a spiritual woman from the Catholic faith who in the late 1800s went against the whole bishop, the whole established male dominated hierarchy, and went against everything. Her desire was to create an orphanage in China.
Sure.
And she was told no a million times. And then she was told, she was so determined in her goal that finally the Pope told her she could go to New York because he thought she would fail. And she went there, met every odd imaginable, and created, in the end, the largest orphanage and hospital, all over the entire world that has ever been created. As this woman in the late 1800s who was battling tuberculosis and was supposed to die in 2 years and didn't die until she was 67. That's how intense she was with her goal and her spirituality and everything. It's an amazing movie if you want to see the determination of following goal through a spiritual path and what can be accomplished when you combine your desires with spirituality. Incredible movie. It's a just phenomenal movie.
I'm going to open up this question this will be the last one because there's indicators of food. May I say something? Please, Dan, I don't know if we can hear you. Yes, go ahead, Daniel.
You can hear me?
Question this will be the last one because there's indicators of food.
Yeah, like-
May I say, please,
Can you hear me? Okay. My take on the whole self-realization issue is we are all individuals and we are all striving for enjoyment in this world. And I realized as a young, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can. Okay. So anyway, I came to realization when I was when I was very young in my 20s. I told this story the last time, but I'm going to really shorten it. When I always had these desires that always came true. Every one of them came upon me. Because I believe in my past life, I did something.
Daniel?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
I really do apologize, but it is almost impossible for us to Daniel.
Yes.
Give it another go. Give it another go.
Okay. Start over?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I believe when it comes to self-realization, that it is,
Okay.
we are, every being, living being on this planet is a